The day I buried my husband was the day I realized I no longer had a home. It was late afternoon when the cemetery emptied. The gray clouds hung low, the wind cold enough to sting my face, but I barely felt it. My whole body felt numb. I stood beside the fresh mound of soil where Daniel had been laid to rest only minutes earlier. 34 years old. Gone because of a drunk driver. Just like that. Friends and distant relatives had already drifted away, murmuring condolences that sounded like echoes in a tunnel. The last person to squeeze my hand was Daniel's coworker. "If you need anything, Emily, anything at all." I nodded politely. But the truth was, the only person I needed was now 6 feet underground. I drove home in silence. The house Daniel and I lived in was technically my parents' property. They had insisted we move there 2 years ago after Daniel's company relocated him. "It'll help you save money," my mother had said. Back then, it sounded like kindness. Now I would learn what it really was. When I turned onto the quiet suburban street where I'd grown up, something felt wrong. The porch light was on even though it was still daylight, and the front door was closed. My parents always left it unlocked for me. Always. I stepped out of the car slowly, my heels crunching on the gravel driveway. My black funeral dress clung to me in the cold wind as I walked up the steps. I tried the handle. Locked. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a mistake. I knocked. Nothing. Then I knocked harder. "Mom? Dad? It's me." Still nothing. My stomach twisted. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. The phone rang inside the house. I could hear it faintly through the door. She declined the call. I froze. Confused, I knocked again. "Mom, I know you're inside." A few seconds later, the curtain in the living room window moved. My mother's face appeared. But instead of concern, she looked irritated. Then she opened the door just enough to stand in the frame, blocking the entrance. "Emily," she said coldly, "what are you doing here?" I stared at her, sure I had misheard. "What do you mean? I live here." She sighed like I had just asked the most ridiculous question. "You lived here with Daniel?" "Yes, and—" My father stepped behind her, arms crossed. And that's when my chest started tightening. My mother folded her arms. "Well," she said flatly, "Daniel's gone now." The words felt like a slap. "I know that," I whispered. "So you'll need to find somewhere else to stay." For a moment, I honestly thought she was joking. I laughed nervously. "Mom, today was his funeral." "Yes, we're aware." My father finally spoke. This house was meant for married couples building their future, not for widows. Widows. He said it like it was something dirty. My brain struggled to catch up with what was happening. "You're kicking me out?" I asked. My mother shrugged. "You're still young. You can start over. Maybe move in with a friend." "A friend?" My voice cracked. "I just buried my husband." She looked impatient. "Emily, please don't start crying again. We've had enough drama for 1 week." Drama. I felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. "Can I at least come inside to get my things?" My father shook his head. "We already packed them." My heart dropped. "What?" My mother pointed toward the driveway. 2 black trash bags sat beside my car. My clothes. My belongings. Everything I owned, stuffed into garbage bags. "I think it's best if you move on quickly," she said. I felt something inside me break. Slowly, I walked down the steps and stared at the bags. Inside were my sweaters, shoes, photos, even the framed picture from my wedding, thrown in like trash. And suddenly, the grief I had been drowning in all day started turning into something else. Something sharper. something colder. I turned back toward the house. My parents were already closing the door. Before it shut, my mother said one final thing. "And Emily, don't come back." The lock clicked. I stood there for a long moment in the empty driveway, wind whipping through my hair. Then I looked down at my phone. At a message Daniel had sent me 3 weeks before the accident. A message I hadn't fully understood at the time. My hands trembled as I opened it again. It contained only one sentence. "If anything ever happens to me, promise you'll open the file in my laptop called Insurance_Truth." Back then, I thought it was just one of Daniel's strange late-night thoughts. Now, standing beside 2 trash bags in my parents' driveway, I suddenly had a terrible feeling. Daniel had known something. Something important. Something my parents clearly didn't. And when I finally opened that file later that night, I realized kicking me out was the biggest mistake my parents would ever make. But before I tell you what was inside that file, I'm curious what you would have done in my position. Would you have begged to stay, or walked away like I did? And trust me, what happened next shocked everyone. I spent the first night after the funeral sitting in my car. Not because I wanted to, because I had nowhere else to go. The 2 trash bags my parents had thrown into the driveway sat in the back seat. Every so often I would glance at them and feel the same wave of disbelief crash over me again. Just hours after burying my husband, my own parents had thrown me out like I was nothing. Around midnight, I finally drove to a cheap roadside motel. The kind with flickering neon lights and thin walls where you could hear the TV in the next room. Room 14. The carpet smelled like old smoke, and the mattress felt like it had springs missing, but I didn't care. All I cared about was Daniel's message. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, I hesitated. Daniel had been a careful person. Quiet. Thoughtful. He didn't say dramatic things unless they mattered. Which meant that message wasn't random. I opened the laptop, clicked on the files, and there it was. Insurance_Truth. My heart pounded as I double-clicked it. A folder opened. Inside were several documents, PDFs, and a video file. The first document was titled, "Life Insurance Policy, Daniel Carter." I frowned. We had life insurance, but Daniel had handled most of the paperwork. I never paid much attention to it. I opened the document, and immediately my breath caught. Coverage amount, $3,200,000. $3.2 million. My eyes widened. Daniel had never mentioned the amount. But what shocked me even more was the next line. Primary beneficiary, Emily Carter, spouse. That was me. Then I noticed something else. A second document labeled Beneficiary Change Request. Rejected. Confused, I opened it. My stomach dropped. It was dated 3 weeks before Daniel's accident. The request form attempted to change the beneficiary from Emily Carter to Margaret and Thomas Reynolds. My parents. My pulse started racing. What was this? I kept reading. At the bottom of the document was a note from the insurance company. Request denied due to incomplete authorization and lack of policyholder confirmation. Meaning Daniel never approved it. Someone had tried to change the beneficiary without him. My chest tightened, and suddenly a memory surfaced. 3 weeks ago, Daniel sitting at the kitchen table late at night, staring at his laptop. When I asked what he was doing, he had smiled and said, "Just fixing something before it becomes a problem." At the time, I didn't think twice about it. Now I knew exactly what he meant. My parents had tried to take his life insurance, $3.2 million. I felt sick. But there was still one thing left in the folder. The video file. My hands trembled as I clicked it. The screen flickered, Then Daniel appeared. He was sitting in his office chair, wearing the blue sweater I had bought him last winter. Seeing his face again knocked the air out of me. For a moment I couldn't breathe. "Hey, Em," he said gently. His voice sounded tired, serious. "If you're watching this, something probably happened to me." My eyes instantly filled with tears. "I hope I'm wrong," he continued, "but the last few weeks have made me uneasy." He leaned closer to the camera. "I found out someone tried to change my life insurance beneficiaries." My chest tightened. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you, but the request came from your parents." I covered my mouth. "They contacted the insurance company pretending to act on my behalf." Daniel sighed. "I shut it down immediately, but the fact they tried it tells me something isn't right." He paused. "If anything ever happens to me, Emily, you need to be careful around them." Tears streamed down my face. "I've already locked the policy so no one can change it without multiple identity checks." He gave a sad smile. "So no matter what anyone says, that money is yours. It's meant to protect you." Then his expression grew serious again. "And if your parents suddenly start acting strange after my death, you'll know why." The video ended. The motel room fell silent. I sat there staring at the screen, my mind racing. Suddenly everything made sense. The cold looks, the impatience, the way they had thrown me out the same day as Daniel's funeral. They thought the money belonged to them. They thought I was standing in the way. And the moment they realized they couldn't control me anymore, they kicked me out. A slow, cold anger began building in my chest. For the first time since the funeral, I wasn't just grieving. I was furious. I wiped my tears and looked at Daniel's video one more time. "Don't worry," I whispered softly. "They made a mistake." Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number. A lawyer Daniel had once mentioned. The call connected after 2 rings. Law offices of Harris and Cole. "My name is Emily Carter," I said quietly. "And I think my parents just committed insurance fraud." There was a brief pause. Then the receptionist said carefully, "Ms. Carter, you should come in tomorrow morning." I looked at the trash bags in the corner of the room. Then I thought about my parents sitting comfortably in that house, believing they had gotten rid of me. They had no idea what was coming. And trust me, what I did next would make them wish they had never locked that door. But before we move to the next part, tell me something honestly. If your own parents tried to steal millions from you after your spouse died, would you forgive them? Or would you make them regret it? The next morning, I walked into the law office feeling like a completely different person. 24 hours earlier, I had been a grieving widow standing beside my husband's grave. Now I was carrying a laptop filled with evidence, and a growing sense that Daniel had protected me more than I ever realized. The receptionist led me into a conference room where a tall man in his 50s stood up to greet me. "Emily Carter?" he asked gently. I nodded. "I'm Richard Harris. Daniel contacted our firm a few weeks ago." That made my heart skip. "He did." Mr. Harris gestured for me to sit. "Yes. He asked us to review his life insurance policy and ensure there was no way it could be altered without his authorization." My stomach tightened. "So he knew." Mr. Harris folded his hands. "He suspected something, yes." I opened the laptop and played the video Daniel had recorded. Mr. Harris watched quietly, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said slowly, "this is very helpful." I blinked. "Helpful?" "Yes." He tapped the table thoughtfully. "Your parents attempted to submit a fraudulent beneficiary change. The insurance company rejected it, but the act itself is still extremely serious." My chest tightened. Is it illegal? He gave a small nod. Potentially. Especially if they misrepresented themselves as acting on Daniel's behalf. I took a deep breath. But they kicked me out yesterday. Mr. Harris looked confused. Kicked you out? The house Daniel and I lived in belongs to them. His eyebrows raised slightly. Ah. He leaned forward. And that house is the one on Lakewood Drive, correct? Yes. Mr. Harris opened a folder in front of him. Then he said something that made my brain freeze. That's interesting. Why? He turned the folder toward me. Inside was a document, a property transfer deed. My eyes moved slowly across the page. Property owner, Daniel Carter. My stomach flipped. What? Mr. Harris nodded calmly. Yes, Daniel purchased that property from your parents last month. My mouth fell open. What? They sold it to him for $480,000. I stared at the document in disbelief. But they told me it was still their house. Mr. Harris gave a small smile. Legally, it isn't. My heart started racing. They don't own it anymore. I felt dizzy. Daniel had bought the house and never told me. Why would he keep that secret? I whispered. Mr. Harris answered quietly. He told us he suspected your parents were manipulating the living situation to control you. That sounded exactly like something Daniel would worry about. He planned to surprise you with the deed after everything was finalized. My eyes filled with tears. But the surprises weren't finished. Mr. Harris flipped another document. And there's something else. I leaned forward. What now? Your parents never finished moving out of the house. I blinked. They, what? They requested 2 months to relocate after selling it. My heart started pounding again. So technically, he nodded. They are currently living in your house. The room went silent. For several seconds I just stared at the papers. My parents had locked me out of my own home. A slow smile began forming on Mr. Harris's face. I must say, he added, this creates a very interesting situation. I felt something inside me shift. The helplessness from yesterday was gone, replaced by clarity. What are my options? I asked. Mr. Harris folded his hands. Well, legally speaking, you are now the sole owner of the property through Daniel's estate. I leaned forward. So I can go back. Yes. But they'll refuse to let me in. Mr. Harris smiled wider. Then we don't ask. He slid another paper toward me. An official notice. Immediate vacate order. Property ownership transfer. My eyes widened. They have 72 hours to leave. For the first time since Daniel died, I laughed. A real laugh. They threw me out with trash bags, I said quietly. Mr. Harris nodded. Well, it appears the universe enjoys irony. But the situation became even more unbelievable when he added one final detail. Also, once the insurance policy is processed. Yes. You will inherit approximately $3.2 million. I sat there stunned. Yesterday I was homeless. Today I owned the house. And my parents, the ones who threw me out, were technically squatters. Mr. Harris handed me the legal papers. Would you like us to deliver the eviction notice? I thought about my mother's cold voice. Don't come back. Then I imagined the look on her face when she realized the truth. No, I said slowly. I want to deliver it myself. Mr. Harris chuckled softly. I suspected you might say that. So later that afternoon, I drove back to Lakewood Drive, to the house my parents thought was still theirs. The same house they had locked me out of yesterday. I walked up the driveway calmly, knocked on the door, and when my mother opened it, her face instantly twisted with annoyance. "Emily, I told you not to come back." I smiled. Then I handed her the envelope. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm not here to come back." Her eyebrows furrowed. "Then why are you here?" I watched her open the papers, watched the color drain from her face, and quietly said the one sentence she never expected to hear. "You have 72 hours to leave my house." But the reaction my parents had next was even worse than I imagined. And trust me, what my father did after reading those papers changed everything. Before we continue to part 4, I have to ask you something. If your parents betrayed you like this, would you still give them the 72 hours? Or would you throw them out the same way they threw me out? My mother's hands started shaking as she read the papers. At first, she looked confused, then pale, then furious. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, waving the documents in my face. "What kind of trick is this?" "It's not a trick," I said calmly. "It's a property deed." Behind her, my father stepped closer. "What's going on?" he asked. She shoved the papers toward him. "Your daughter thinks she owns the house." My father grabbed the notice and scanned it quickly. For a moment, his expression didn't change. Then his jaw tightened. "That's impossible." I shrugged slightly. "Daniel bought the house last month." Silence fell over the doorway. My mother blinked rapidly. "No, we never." "You sold it," I said, my voice steady, "for $480,000. My father's face darkened. "That was a private agreement." "Yes," I replied. "And now the property legally belongs to Daniel's estate." I folded my arms. "Which means it belongs to me." My mother stared at me like she had never seen me before. "You're lying." I gestured toward the papers still in my father's hand. "You might want to read page 2. He flipped the page. His face turned red. "You think a piece of paper means you can throw us out?" he barked. "You threw me out yesterday," I reminded him. "That was different." "How?" I asked quietly. Neither of them answered. For a long moment, we just stood there on the porch. Then my mother crossed her arms. "We're not leaving." I nodded slowly. "That's your choice." "And what are you going to do about it?" she sneered. I pointed calmly at the notice. "You have 72 hours. She scoffed. "We raised you. You owe us." That sentence hit a nerve deep inside my chest. "Owe you," I repeated. My voice was no longer shaking. "You tried to steal Daniel's life insurance." My mother froze. My father's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the quiet porch. "Someone tried to change my life insurance beneficiaries." My mother's face drained of color. My father looked like someone had punched him. The video continued. "The request came from your parents." When it ended, the silence was deafening. I lowered the phone slowly. "You tried to take $3.2 million, I said quietly. My mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. My father was the first to recover. "That video proves nothing," he snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I took a step closer. "Because my lawyer seems to think it proves attempted insurance fraud." That got their attention. My mother's eyes widened. "You involved a lawyer?" "Yes." My father's voice rose angrily. "You're threatening your own parents?" I shook my head slowly. No. I pointed at the house. I'm removing people who illegally locked me out of my own home. My mother grabbed my arm suddenly. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you. I calmly pulled my arm away. You packed my life into trash bags the day I buried my husband. Her face twisted with anger. You should be thanking us. Without us, you'd be nothing. Something inside me finally snapped. No, I said firmly. Without Daniel, you thought I'd be nothing. The truth hung in the air between us. My father clenched his fists. You think money makes you powerful now? I met his gaze. No. Then I said the one thing that made both of them go completely silent. But it does give me better lawyers. My mother looked panicked now. You wouldn't report us. I tilted my head slightly. Wouldn't I? She looked at my father nervously. For the first time, they didn't look confident. They looked scared. And honestly, after everything they had done, seeing that fear felt strangely satisfying. I took a slow breath. You have 3 days, I said. Then I turned and walked down the driveway. Just before getting into my car, I paused and looked back at the house. My husband bought that home so I would always feel safe, I said quietly. Then I looked directly at them. You turned it into the place where you betrayed me. I opened the car door. So now you don't get to live there. I drove away without another word. But later that night, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Mom. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. So I answered. For a few seconds, she didn't speak. Then she said something I never expected to hear. Emily, we need to talk. But the thing she said next made me realize this situation was about to get much worse. Before we move into the final part, I want to know what you think. Do you believe my parents are about to apologize? Or do you think they're planning something else? My phone stayed silent for several seconds after I answered. Then my mother finally spoke. Emily, we need to talk. Her voice sounded different. Not angry, not cold, careful, almost nervous. I leaned back in the motel chair. That's interesting, I said. Yesterday you told me not to come back. This is serious. So was my husband's funeral, I replied. There was another pause. Then she lowered her voice. You shouldn't have involved lawyers. I let out a small laugh. You tried to steal Daniel's life insurance. That's not what happened. Oh, I said calmly. Then explain the beneficiary change request. She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that made my stomach twist. You don't understand the whole situation. I frowned. What situation? She exhaled slowly. The money wasn't for us. My heart skipped. What are you talking about? It was for the family. I sat up. You are the family, I said. Not just us. Her words came out sharper now. You have a younger brother, Emily. That made me pause. Yes, and Jason has debt. I blinked. What kind of debt? She hesitated, then said quietly, gambling. My chest tightened. Jason had always been the favorite child. Charming, carefree, the one my parents constantly defended. But gambling, how much debt? I asked slowly. Almost $2 million. I went silent. $2 million. People are looking for him, she added. And you thought stealing my husband's insurance money would fix that? I asked. It wasn't stealing. It literally was. Her voice grew desperate. You don't understand how dangerous this is. I rubbed my forehead. So you decided to destroy your daughter's life instead? You would have been fine, she snapped. You're young. You could remarry. That sentence hit harder than anything else she had said. Remarry. Like Daniel was replaceable. Like the life we built together meant nothing. I closed my eyes for a moment. You tried to erase me, I said quietly. No. You tried to take everything Daniel left to protect me. She didn't respond. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. If you report us, Jason could die. The room went completely silent. I stared at the wall, processing the weight of that sentence. They hadn't just betrayed me. They were trying to emotionally blackmail me now. You made your choices, I said slowly. So are you. Her voice hardened. If you push this, you're choosing money over your own brother. I laughed quietly. No, I corrected. You chose him over me. There was a long silence. Finally, she whispered, You're really going to do this? Yes. But we're your parents. I looked down at the trash bags still sitting in the corner of the motel room. My parents, I said softly, locked me out of my own home the day I buried my husband. Her breathing grew shaky. You have 72 hours, I reminded her. Then I hung up. 3 days later, a moving truck sat outside the house. My parents didn't speak to me as they carried boxes out. My mother wouldn't even look at me. My father looked like he had aged 10 years. But the moment that stayed with me forever happened when the front door finally closed behind them. For the first time since Daniel died, I walked into my home. Sunlight spilled across the living room. The same couch, the same kitchen, the same place where Daniel used to make coffee every morning. I stood there quietly and whispered, You protected me, didn't you? In a strange way, it felt like he had. Mr. Harris called later that afternoon. The insurance claim has been approved, he told me. $3.2 million. The house, Daniel's savings, everything he had worked for, was now safe. And the people who tried to take it from me were gone. But the real twist came 2 weeks later, when I got a call from the police. They had opened an investigation into the fraudulent insurance request. And apparently, my parents weren't the only names involved. There was another signature on the documents, Jason's. My brother had helped plan the entire thing. And that investigation was only just beginning.